Hello and welcome back for a second, that's a double stuffed Flavor Friday on a Tuesday. Today we are going to be taking a look at last week's Flavor Friday on a Tuesday, which we missed on that Tuesday, and incidentally also on the Friday, which is going to be featuring the flavor of the Golden Horde in the upcoming game with the codename Project Caesar. This time we have Pavia, or rather that time, because this time was today, the other time when we talked about Korea and China, and now we'll be talking about the Golden Horde. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hello and welcome one more Tuesday. Again, I'm not sure how to address this. See, we were not wished a happy Tuesday, nor a Flavor Friday on a Tuesday, nor a Tasty Tuesday, but instead we get a hello and welcome one more Tuesday, which is probably more respectful because he is welcoming not us, but the day, which is far more important. We should honor and venerate our Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays, and also Mondays, to the Tinto flavor. But yeah, so I'm not sure how to evaluate this. We've not gotten necessarily exactly what we've wanted out of Pavia, because he doesn't capitalize holidays, but then he is also welcoming Tuesdays, and now I don't know what to make of any of this. To Tinto flavor, the happy days, indeed. By not naming the happy Tuesday, he avoids the necessary need to capitalize it, and so he does seem to be finding a way to circumvent the need to capitalize, the happy salutation holidays, but by welcoming them, in fact, welcoming the days, in which we take a look at the flavor content for Europa Universalis 5. Now, for a while, they were saying the game with the codename Project Caesar, top secret, and nothing has changed, people. You need to wake up if you think this name of this game is going to be Europa Universalis 5. I know that they're doing this press release, and we've talked about this a ton, and they have, arts assets, and they're doing a media push, but obviously this is just more obfuscation on the behalf of the devs to hide the name of the real name of the game, which is far more reasonable than Europa Universalis 5, which is, of course, Anvil Ovaries Pursue. That is an anagram of Europa Universalis 5, or Europa Universalis 5 is rather an anagram of Anvil Ovaries Pursue, which is in fact going to be the true name of the game. That is the pursuit indeed. Today we will be taking a look at the Golden Horde. Being the most important step horde in 1337, it has a good mix of both unique and generic content. My favorite. I love it when it's both unique and generic. So, without further ado, the great GENGHIS Khan managed to forge an empire, a great empire for all Mongol peoples. And, indeed it was good for the Mongol peoples, but I'm not sure about the other people. They say that, the overall, carbon emission rate dropped by a significant rate as a result of Genghis Khan's killing so many people that the earth cooled very slightly. And there's a Genghis Khan quote I just absolutely adore because it's horrifying. And that is, I know that you have sinned. I know that you have sinned. I know this, because had you not sinned, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you. And you're just like, Jesus. Anyways, bringing into his fold great swaths of land from Europe to China. All people learned to fear the sound of the Mongol armies galloping the might and power of the Khan. Or if they didn't learn, they died. As heirs to the legacy, the dream of bringing back the glory of the greatest Mongol horde still alive. It was, to be fair, this is, if you look at, a lot of stuff that cultural exports in Mongolia, it's still all about Genghis Khan. It was Khan Borjigin Jochi, sorry about pronunciation, a son of Genghis, and his son Khan Borjigin Batu, who carried on the legacy of the Great Khan and established the Golden Horde. Controlling the westernmost expansion of the Great Empire, they are in control of the vast steppes, and many of the European countries are subservient to them, afraid of their might. Incidentally, the Golden Horde is kind of where the Black Death tends to spawn. But we have this Golden Horde, we have our Khan, with a pretty good stat line here, 6s in all the right places, which is all of them. Tends to be pretty strong overall. was that 200 as an overall score is one of kind of the higher scores we've seen without anything looking too insane, just a very solid kind of line. We have the Golden Horde here, and then also the Golden Horde in green, which is, I believe, showing some subjects. You see there's a little bit of subjugation in here, and this is showing their main territory. Of course, when you zoom out, it actually uses your name over your subjects, so when you blob with subjects and you zoom out, it still just shows your name nice and big, so subjects are back in, baby. Steppe hordes are an army-based country, and it has some specificities. Steppe Horde is government in Horde Unity. We haven't played one of these, so I don't necessarily have too many insights on them. I think my understanding is, like, when you fight a war, you just take the land, rather than, like, needing to peace out and take it, or whatever. We have succession laws, policies, and estate privileges here. Downgrading to rural settlement cost, minus 75%. Auto-conquer when at war is the feature we are talking about, which I think probably has some interesting balance consequences that maybe need to be taken a look at. But you know, you could just conquer and full annex someone just by taking all their territory. Prefers court language to be the common language, plus 10. I don't know how big a value of that is, like plus 10% or plus 10. They can raid borders, and Horde Unity on ruler death minus 50. So my understanding is that they will tend to implode a little bit when you when the ruler dies, which of course makes some sense. Yeah, shout out to Genghis Khan. As you can see here, it starts with some reforms and privileges. We do see what looks to be a unique reform in here. Quite a few in the chieftains. Now, we don't necessarily recognize all of these. I think one of these, though, in terms of, yeah, I don't recognize all the arts. I have to imagine they do have the minus 5 control somewhere in the nobles category. This is like a plus development one. I think, and then this is either the merchants one or the prosperity one. I'm not sure exactly what all these do off the top of my head. This one is militia for the commoners. I think this one's freedom of movement for the commoners. This one's expanded hunting grounds. And this one, I think, gives decentralization and something else, but it's one we've generally avoided. And then we also have the Dhimmi, which are properly represented in this week's Tinto flavor, rather than being cut off, you know, and they're not shown on screen at all. And we also have the tribes. How much is the tribes power? 0%. Okay, 24% for the Dhimmi. That's quite a big percentage. I don't think I've seen a Dhimmi that powerful before, but it does have 3 million members, right? So the quantity of people you have, to a large extent, it does inform what their clout or influence percentage is going to be. Victoria's rebuilds, we just like can't get away from the word clout. We have as our government reform the legacy of Genghis Khan, which is going to have cavalry maintenance cost minus 10%. Anytime you could stack these types of modifiers really strong. Expected cost, of course, minus 2%. Now this is not your expected cost of court is actually minus 2%. Is your expected cost of court is a certain percentage of your at least I think this is how it works, a certain percentage of your tax base. And so minus 2% is actually like a lot more than minus 2% instead of in terms of expected cost of court costs. But overall, expected cost of court is not all that expensive. And I think it's the investment you use for legitimacy. Monthly progress stars aristocracy plus 10. Is not something you're hugely a fan of. You probably would want to slot this out, I guess, unless you're using a ton of cavalry, which we probably will be, so it's maybe going to be worth it. We see a unique estate privilege in tribal host. A horse's output plus 10%. That kind of seems a little bit weak. It doesn't give any happiness, but plus 50% power. The way the math works, after a certain point, giving more power to them is kind of less consequential. So maybe this is kind of okay to use, but the fact that you're not getting any happiness off of it for the estate is kind of a little bit of a downside. Here we see expected cost of court plus 1%, and then we see 5% happiness and 20% power. Something like this is maybe worth using just so that we can get the nobles more happy with us. Kind of depends a little bit on what breakpoints and what things will look like. But the expected cost of court, you're like, oh, okay, you have to pay more. But with the increased happiness threshold, you can actually tax the nobles more. And if you're extracting more from the nobles through the higher tax rate than you're paying in cost of court, this estate would pay for itself effectively. Continuing on, here you have some unique advances of the Golden Horde as usual. We have culture's capacity plus 50%. That's an interesting one. I guess that allows you to kind of keep everything together initially. Manpower plus 10%, culture's capacity plus 50%. I think countries have +1 base. It's generally kind of a hard modifier to come by. And it allows you to accept a lot of other cultures under your banner. 50% is a lot. And this is kind of something that's not that easy to get percentage modifiers on. So that makes it so that any sort of flat amount is going to be really useful. So long term, you will be able to accept a lot of pops if you kind of can keep this up. Cavalry maintenance cost minus 20%. So now we're taking a look at stacking modifiers, right? Because the minus 10% we had on the government reform earlier, that's minus 10%, right? But if you're already at 80% because you have cavalry maintenance cost of minus 20%, what it effectively is to you, that minus 10% is minus 12.5%, right? And you have increasing marginal returns on discounts in terms of how the math works. And so if we see several cavalry maintenance cost discounts, then suddenly cavalry starts to look a lot better. Currently, my understanding is cavalry can't assault. And so to the extent that assaulting is good, cavalry in general are kind of weak because they cannot assault fortifications. But we have the Legacy of the Golden Horde up next. Monthly Legitimacy plus 0.1. Monthly Horde Unity plus 0.1 as well. That'll keep everything together. Age of Renaissance tech, so is kind of available a little bit early. And the Legitimacy is going to be nice, I assume, if for keeping things together. If you can get up to 100 Legitimacy or Horde Unity or what have you, and then your ruler dies and you lose half of it, that's not terrible, but like going from like 50 to 0 would be like particularly bad, and you'd have a little bit of hard time keeping stuff together. You'll tend to trigger really nasty situations that give like minus 100% crown power, and then the minus crown power, the estates get super, or like, yeah, the it's difficult. Generally speaking, both stability and legitimacy are not hyper important, like once you get quite a good score of them, but getting really towards the bottom of the barrel in terms of the spectrum of them tends to be really bad. We have the Perso-Mongol administration. Speed of integration plus 25%. I'm kind of the opinion you should use subjects generally to integrate more, and I've generally found this speed of integration modifier to not feel particularly good, but perhaps if you stack enough of it, you start to integrate really fast, this type of thing. I think expanding with subjects is more the way to go, and your subjects will integrate stuff for you. And then we have the Tatar Traditions. That's a lot of T's, huh? Tatar Traditions? Anyways, that's cavalry power plus 20%, further encouraging you to use cavalry. The Mongol Steppe Horde has access to 2 unique units, the Horse Archers and Pavia. Oh, he didn't do it. Normally Pavia puts what the differential between this and a normal unit is, because almost all this stat line is going to be exactly the same. I think that we have more movement speed than the average cavalry, but I'm not sure. And I think we have more combat speed than the average cavalry, but again, not sure. Morale damage done, 20%. I think that this is also different, a little bit improved. But again, it's a little bit tough. But Horse Archers are going to be nice. I think that the bonus on Sparse and Grasslands, I think you just have the penalties on normal light cavalry or cavalry. And now you also have the Sparse and Grasslands bonus, which... if you look at the map where the Mongol Horde, or where the Golden Horde is, it's basically all grassland or sparse, and so getting a 20% combat bonus is like, that's pretty substantive. You're probably going to be really obnoxious to try and fight on that territory. And we have the Arugs, sorry for pronunciation, which I'm assuming are probably going to... I don't know if the morale damage taken and strength damage taken is... normal. I think it is. I think what's unique about these guys is the 3.5 movement speed. These guys move just as fast as these guys. So now, suddenly, if you have 0 infantry and you just use a combination of your auxiliaries and your horsemen, you can zip around the map pretty quickly. And this is something that I think that in multiplayer, I'm really excited for the notion that micro of units can be a thing, and also having units that have specific roles for the purposes of microing can be a thing. And having cavalry units that can just move fast, cut supply lines, kind of harass where the enemy is weak, and then dip when they move a substantive army there, that to me is like really exciting, specifically in the context of multiplayer. It's like actively not exciting versus the AI, because the AI is like, it tends to either not be able to do that thing or be able to do it perfectly. It tends to be really binary in how well it can execute those types of things and be obnoxious and be able to split off and do this type of thing. But I think that one of the problems, though, is that this type of play pattern is really cut off by forts and the strategic maneuvering and this type of stuff. So I think that forts, and you can't assault forts with cavalry. So you can't zip around and take forts really quickly and then dip, at least not with the cavalry. You would need to do it with fast infantry units. And so I think I like a world where forts are particularly expensive, or you can find ways to dip through the zone of control. I wish you could take a penalty to dip through the zone of control, like a really significant penalty. But okay. You can, once you hit like Napoleonic tech or whatever, eventually there's a tech and there's like some people with unique advances that get to overcome it. But okay, these illustrations were recently added to the unit tooltip. The first one is the East Asian geographical unit for Age of Traditions horsemen, while the other one's generic for is generic one for supply units. Is this really generic for supply units? Okay, but this is the art that he pointed out. Also, a couple of unique buildings. The Kurultai, which, wow, I think... Is this Age of Traditions? This is Age of Traditions. This is the most manpower we've seen on a building. For context, like the Mamluk building, which we thought was kind of insane with 25 manpower, also can be put in rural areas. I don't know what this other requirement, though, is, this checkmark requirement, but for context, the Mamluk building, which we thought was pretty insane, was 25 manpower. This is so much more manpower. Obviously, it's double. But its building cost is 500. Okay, I think the Mamluk's building cost was either 100 or 50. So this is a very expensive building in terms of cost. Wow, 500? That's crazy. Okay, well, the other thing we were going to say is that, so I guess your top end is really high, but your efficiency is not that great. The Korean barracks, which we reviewed kind of earlier today, or we got to see, only gave 5 manpower. And I think that costs 50. So this is just the same rate as a Korean barracks, but it does give plus 50. So this is a better building than the Korean barracks, for example, or probably is. You also might like the input production method things a little bit better. We haven't taken a super close look at the economics of individual goods, so it's hard to talk about this. But relative to the Korean building, it's better to have a building that costs 10 times as much and gives you 10x the manpower, because eventually you're going to be throttled by where you can build it. Korean building also, you cannot build in rural areas, which is kind of the one icon there. We also have the Caravan Sari. I'm not sure pronunciation. Someone else corrected me. But this is the building that we were referring to in our Mali run, where we get trade advantage, a little bit of trade advantage, and trade capacity plus 1, but very importantly, can be built in rural areas. It does have an additional requirement that they have to be built like in certain types of provinces, locations, and it does require jewelry and fabric. This isn't the production method I remember when playing as Mali. I thought the production method was like gold and fabric, rather than just the raw gold itself, rather than the transformed gold. But this is not an enormous amount of jewelry requirement. The run cost is not particularly high, and it does give trade capacity. But the really distinct feature of the Caravanserai is you can build it in rural areas, where normally marketplaces you require in urban areas. So normally you get throttled based on the number of burgers you have, and also based on the number of rural or urban locations you have in terms of how much trade you can add. And with both Mali and here we've seen with the Golden Horde, this not only doesn't use burgers, it uses laborers, but it can be built in rural areas. And so this means that you unlock way, way, way more capacity to ramp up trade far, far quicker. Now, the unfortunate thing about the Golden Horde is their resources suck. It's all like livestock, horses, and like hunting goods and like lumber and grain. And so like all those things have really low base prices. So you're probably not going to be able to leverage this caravanserai too hard, but okay. The Golden Horde has access to a unique mechanic to portray its relationship with the Russian principalities, the Tatar Yoke, which is no joke, which is an international institution. It is going to give, you cannot declare war on other Yoke members. The leader will get a prestige and tribal cohesion. Other members get negative development, yuck. And we will see that at the top of this is Muscovy, which is the prince that is in charge of kind of keeping everything together. Here we can see a picture of the Yoke. You see Muscovy is the enforcer, keeping everyone in line, unfortunately. And also, you see that you do have some expansion spots. If you are playing as Muscovy, you can't declare on any of this, but you have some expansion spots up here. And notably, the resources, I think, in Ural are probably going to be really good if we know anything about Victoria 3. Expecting to see a lot of mineral resources up there. Taking a look at the Tatar Yoke, which is no joke, Grand Prince is going to be the enforcer, and that's Muscovy. As you can see, there are 3 statutes: the Tatar Overlord, the Golden Horde, the Grand Prince of Vladimir, which in 1337 is Muscovy, and the regular members. Grand Prince does get monthly development a little bit. I think the base rate is I can't remember if the base rate is 0.0. If you have max prosperity, I think the base rate is 0.005. So this means you are getting plus 50% effectively a base rate of development, which is quite a bit. Which actually means that maybe you want to stay in this position. This is quite a bit of development. The problem is how do you expand and do this type of thing as this? But this is you can even develop a long-term strategy for being the Grand Prince or remaining this. This is quite strong. Plus 0.025. 0025 rather. Okay, the Grand Prince collects tribute from the regular members and sends it to the Overlord. Here we see every month the following transactions are made. We are, as Muscovy 2, you do have to pay up, but these guys will pay as well in gold and manpower. And so we do see proportion, okay. Or not, because each member has a special section of the country budget to pay more or less tribute. And then the Grand Prince of Vladimir also chooses how much of that goes to the Tatar Overlord. Oh, interesting. So you just withhold the payments. If any member, including the Grand Prince, pays less than 50% of the capacity, it will get a development balance. So I guess you pay half, portraying their small-scale raids conducted by the Horde to put the princes back in line. If the budget's over 50%, the members will get a bonus on diplomats, and the Grand Prince on its prestige. Prestige is probably not worth paying a lot more for, but it depends, I guess, on the amount of money. Finally, there are a couple of additional actions in the IO, International Organization. One allows any other member of the Tatar Yoke to declare war and break it, while the other allows the member to request the Tatar Overlord become the new Grand Prince of Vladimir. When we experimented a little with Kiev, it seemed like you could just like in the first run of access, it seemed like you could just ask to become the Grand Prince and they would just say yes, kind of no matter what. So we got that as Kiev, but yeah, you can request to be the prince. But now let's look more towards the narrative content. The most important piece of content is the Horde Civil War, a disaster that can appear if the Horde unity dips too low. And remember, you get a huge hit to the Horde unity if you have a ruler die. So ruler dies and triggers this fairly easily. You have bonuses towards developing Horde unity over time. I think Horde unity is probably analogous to legitimacy, but this is kind of a little bit what we were talking about, where legitimacy and stability aren't too crazy powerful modifiers, but if you get into the really lower dredges of the spectrum upon which you can be, it tends to be really bad for you. But we get the death of our previous ruler has left the Golden Horde in the precarious situation. The new Khan might have assumed the Golden Throne. We're not sure. It's Schrodinger's throne. Yet he lacks the unity and support of his warriors. As such, Kurkino Guyuk, a warlord from within our borders, has started assembling loyalists to challenge Khan, this one, for the throne. So, we get a civil war. Yikes. And we have a Horde civil war disaster. Ooh, girl, you not a situation, you a disaster. A situation, of course, being one that has multiple countries, and a disaster being just for your country. Special just for you. We see crown power minus 20%. That can be a little bit nasty. Estate satisfaction equilibrium minus 2.5%. Monthly control minus 0.5. Yikes. So I think the base rate of gaining control is like, I think it's 0.5. And then if you have high satisfaction, I think it boosts it, something like this. If you have low satisfaction, I think it goes after it. And so if you have negative satisfaction and this, you'll actually just gradually lose control down to 0, I think. Also discipline minus 10%, monthly Horde unity, a little bit extra. Horde unity on ruler death is plus 50, so it moves you in the other direction, and you have to get up to 50, we have to get over 50 Horde unity in order to break away from this, and also get the stab up to a positive 25. Remember, stab is the spectrum of minus 100 to plus 100, so if you're at minus 50 stab or something, that's going to take forever to generate up to 25. We get Horde Civil War, and then the disaster can occur. Once you get the conditions upon which disasters can occur, they have a monthly tick chance of appearing. And of course, when you have 0.5% or 0.05%, they always hit on the first tick. As everyone knows, there are some events that can happen the disaster's active, usually not with the best of outcomes. So we have some flavor text to refer to that, and we will have two choices. We bow before no one, we gain Horde unity, and every pop joins a rivaling warlord, or we lose Horde unity, which is going to make it, if we have to get above 75 to end the disaster, this is going to make it harder to end the disaster, and change towards decentralization, which is probably not ideal. Losing a bunch of control in a bunch of areas, not ideal. We see the murder of Mr. Mohammed, Borjigin Mohammed Ozbek, which is going to be, stuff happens sometimes. Only lose 2.5 stab, and then if we gain a bunch of Horde unity because he died, maybe that's a good thing. Unsecured borders, which is not ideal. We will have to live without it. Minus 10 Horde unity, minus 10 prestige. Every neighboring country will become aware of our weakened position. So if you are playing as Muscovy or something like this, you perhaps want to just wait for the ruler of the Golden Horde to maybe die, and see if you can spike one of these kind of going-ons where it will be easy to fight them. Otherwise, it might not be so easy. Once the rebel progress of the pretender reaches 100%, an event will hire, giving you the option to either accept their demands or escalate to a full new war. I assume just escalating their demands are going to be good, and you just take a huge hit in legitimacy or whatever. Maybe it's no good. Here we can see the revolution, or sorry, civil war. I think there's an important distinction, and those words are perhaps a little bit lost on me. If victorious in the civil war, revolutions refers to like the late game mechanic, right? The pretender will be put in his place, but as long as the disaster is active, another one will soon rise again. Yikes. So I guess swapping gives you plus 50, right? If a ruler dies, you get plus 50 Horde unity, so maybe that's a good way to kind of make progress. And then we have another vulture who tries to claim the throne coming up here. Long struggle. Okay, nothing too crazy. Plus Horde unity, and then we have rise of a new warlord. The succession never ends. Only when there is no more rebellious or civil wars active and both stability and Horde unity have been restored will the disaster finally end, which is going to be big yikes. So you're going to want to actively probably invest a lot in maintaining legitimacy so that when you get that minus 50 Horde unity hit, it only reduces you to 50. So you'll probably want to try and be as close to 100 as possible. And so generally with your investment, you'll probably want to put in a lot to try and avoid this disaster, because it seems a little bit nasty. Gain a little bit of stab when you end the disaster, but also if you have decentralizing estate privileges, right? and you need to get rid of them. Pulling in state privilege is like 90 to 100 stab, and if getting below 50 minus 50 stab triggers this disaster to some extent, that's going to be a little bit frustrating because you'll have to get up to like 60 stab and then take the 100 stab hit to go down to minus 40, and then if you get unlucky and you get some event hitting your stab, maybe you get put in a really kind of sticky situation. So this is like one of the ways in which some countries are really pressured, is by having a few of the really bad estates that you want to revoke. It's really hard to get out from because minus 100 stabs is just rough to have to pay. Not just because it's an investment over several years in terms of being able to generate the amount of stab for that. You obviously generate more stab the less of it you have, but also because it going into lower ends of stab exposes you to disasters like this, and so probably a little bit interesting to try and figure out your way to work through that. But and much more. That's all for today. Tomorrow, the Tinto Talks, we will talk about the mechanics of the Islam religion, and we will probably also take a look at it tomorrow as well as part of our catching up. So we will have a double Happy Wednesday tomorrow. But we can also wishlist Europa Universalis 5 on Steam now, which of course, you know, everyone knows it's really Anvil Overease Pursue. The true name of the game, the true heir to Europa Universalis 5 is of course Anvil Overease Pursue. But that's all we have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You know, do the YouTube algorithm thing. And other than that, have a Flavor Friday on a Tuesday. That's the one. A second Flavor Friday on a Tuesday. But bam.